Alright, hey everybody. Today I'm going to be showing you how to do your one-point perspective floating words. First things first, what we're going to need to do is start with the margin. We're going to make a 1-inch margin on the top of our paper. Remember, it's important to always measure 3 times in order to get a straight line. It's very important that you don't skip this step and try to cheat it. 99% of the times, if you don't do this, it's not going to be a straight line. Okay. We're going to put a 1.5-inch margin on the left side of our paper, and again I'm going to measure 3 times here. I'm measuring from the left side in order to make my vertical lines. It's important to remember that we don't need to go all the way down to the bottom of the paper, because in the bottom is going to be our perspective. Okay, so just so that I don't have to draw my next lines all the way through and I have kind of a guideline as far as where I need to stop them, I'm going to measure a line 5 inches from the margin line on the top of the paper. This is just going to be a guide, again, so that I don't draw these lines that I'm grading out here too far down. The less we have to erase, the better. Okay? Alright, what I'm doing now is making my 1/2 inch marks for my vertical lines. As you can see, I'm doing this towards the top of the paper. Probably towards that margin line there. I wouldn't want to do it above that because then that just is some erasing in some space that I don't need to do erasing. It's important that we do these very lightly. I'm probably drawing a little harder than I would if I was you in the final, and that's just so you guys are able to see it. I'm going to do it also in the middle of the paper here and towards the bottom of that 5-inch line there. I could do these all the way down the paper if you wanted to assure a straighter line, but they should be well enough there within the 5 inches. These lines now, I've turned the ruler sideways. I'm lining up those 3 lines. As long as I can see each of the 3 marks, I know I've measured correctly and I'm doing a good job. If you also notice, I'm just drawing down to that 5-inch line. Again, trying not to make any extra cleanup for myself later in life. If I go a little bit over, it's not really a big deal. If I go a little short, I can always change it later. But if I do go into that perspective area, it's going to be a huge mess to clean up. Okay, the next plan is to get our horizontal lines in there. I'm doing the same thing here. I'm making a mark every 1/2 inch, starting from that top margin. This is going to be a little bit less work than the last one there. I just need to make 3 sets of marks here. 1 towards the left, 1 in the middle, and 1 towards the right. It doesn't really matter where you put them as long as they're spaced far enough out there so that we can assure ourselves a straight line. Again, if things are bunched up too tightly, you have no idea if you've made a minor mistake or not. Let's turn the ruler to the side here, and we're going to make our horizontal lines. Okay, you can see I've left some pencil marks on the paper. I obviously drew this a little too hard so you guys can see. Same with these marks up on the top. I would definitely not draw as hard as these, and you'll see at the end of the video. But what I'm marking out now is the different spaces that I'm going to put my letters in. I've asked you to do a 6-letter word, and that's just because we end up with 5 by 10 boxes. And 6-letter words fit in here really nicely. If you want to change that and do a 5-letter word, remember, or a 4-letter word, you can do that. You just have to put another character like an exclamation point, question mark, or something like that in there. I'm going to do the word Oregon because I love Oregon, and it's a nice 6-letter word. I'm using the grid to create these letters. Okay. If you notice, this is a very kind of graphic style of lettering. Sharp edges and everything. That tends to work the best for perspective drawing. If you wanted to do bubble letters or something like that, you're more than welcome to, but you just have to make sure that you fit the bubble letters into the interior space there, meaning it touches the top and both sides. We have all this space and we want to make sure that we use it all. If you notice, every single letters I'm going to create here is touching on the side, it's touching the tops, and it's filling up the whole space. Okay. They also have a certain amount of thickness to them. They're not skinny letters. They're leaving me enough room that I can do patterns inside them. and the patterns will be a vital part of my piece as far as appearance goes at the end. Alright, after I clean that up, I'm going to start giving my perspective lines here. I put a vanishing point a little off screen there at the bottom of the paper. What I'm doing now is just finding any corner that can connect through open space, meaning it doesn't crash into a letter or anything, and I'm just playing connect the dots. Remember, this is just a complicated game of connect the dots. If a line can be connected on a corner to the vanishing point, and again it doesn't go through the letter, I'm going to do it. If you notice, like inside the O and the R there, once it crashes into a letter, I'm also just going to stop. Okay, so I'm just going around here checking for any places that I can make a line, and I'm making it. Alright, now that we've got all our vanishing lines, if you notice, it looks like this letter just comes from infinity and is projected back there. We have to give it a little bit of depth so it feels like it's floating in space. I'm going to mark a line at around 2 inches there to give it the depth, and then I'm just going to go through and systematically check all the angles that need to be reflected down in the bottom there. If you take any 2 vanishing lines and follow the space in between them up to the top, you can see what the angle is like, and it's just basically reflected at the bottom there. This can be the most difficult part of this project, so it may take a little bit of practice on your part, so I would definitely draw these lines very lightly to begin with. I tend to take my ruler, lay it up to that angle, and slide it down the best I can to fill that space. I already have the flat line across the bottom there. Since the majority of the space is going to be flat, since I drew that line straight across, I can just use that as my guide for what I'm going to do. This is pretty deep, so we're not really going to have to deal with what happens inside the letters. For the most part, those are all just going to crash into the walls, and that's where they're just going to stay. But if you wanted to do this a little more shallow, you definitely want to be taking a look to see if, like inside the O there, if that was a little shorter on the bottom, I may have to deal with what would happen inside there. But for the most part, since we gave it 2 inches of depth, that's not going to be an issue. Okay, I've cleaned it up the best I can. Again, I'm sorry guys, mine looks absolutely terrible. That's just because I had to draw it really dark so you could see it on the screen here. I'm happy with what all my lines look like, so I'm just going to take a moment here, go back through, solidify all of my work so that we can see it better. And then after this, it's just time to put the patterns in, color in the depth, and we're finished. So thank you guys.